Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about basic for loops. For loops are a super important topic in computer science. You'll see them in a little bit different formats in each coding language. However, this gives you a very good understanding of how they work and how we're going to use them throughout the semester. This is what we're looking at, a for loop definition right here. Always starts with the word for. We have our parentheses just like we do with our if statement, and then inside we have three parts. Three parts are very important. The first part is where we create a variable to count for us. The variable we're going to use, so var I. I is always used in this type of for loop. You can use other things, however, the very first time I learned computer science and learned a for loop back in college, this is exactly the way I learned it, using an I. I kind of stands for iterations, so it is counting the number of iterations through our for loop. Iterate is one of the vocab words for this lesson that you'll need to check into. But we're going to start our iterations at 0. In computer science, you always count from 0. So, in normal math, we think the first number as being 1. In computer science, it's always 0. So that is our first portion, and we have a semicolon. Our second portion is our Boolean statement. The Boolean statement is tells the for loop when to run, basically. So if we want the for loop to run if the I is less than count. Now count is how many times we want the for loop to run. So this number will consistently change depending on what you are trying to accomplish. If we want something to run 10 times, then we put 10 right here. Now the way that works is it starts at 0. So the first iteration is on 0. Then it runs to less than 10. So it will run 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. However, on the 10th iteration, 10 is not less than 10. That is false, and it stops. However, we have gone 0 to 9. That is 10 times. So that is our second part. That is our Boolean expression. Our third part is our counter. This is where we increase our increment. So I++ will increase I 1 time. So the next few slides will show exactly how this runs. Again, just like with the if statements, we have our curly brackets, and any code that we want to execute while the for loop is running goes inside those brackets. The brackets are very important. So let's look at this. Here is a for loop that creates the variable I, initializes it to 0. We want to run our for loop while I is less than 3, and we're going to increase by 1 each time it runs. Each time it runs, we want to print the I. So in a for loop, the only thing that is consistent is that I changes. I will change every single time. It is counting. It is always increasing. Sometimes it's decreasing if it's set up to decrease, but I is always changing. So as we go through here, we create our variable, and you can see down here what I is currently holding. So I is a variable. It is holding the value of 0. Now we do our test. I, which is 0, is less than 3. That is true. So we come down here and we print I to the screen. After we print it, we come back up here, we increase it. Now we run through our Boolean expression again. I, which is 1, is still less than 3, so we come down and print I, which is now 1. We increase again, we test again. 2 is less than 3, we print it, I here. I is now 3, we come to test, 3 is not less than 3, so we have a false statement. Our for loop ends, and we jump past our code and move on with anything else that's in our program. So this is why we go from 0 to less than 3, which is 0, 1, 2, and that has occurred 3 times. Okay, so let's look at an example of this real quick and some different iterations of what we're going to do. So as we run this, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So you can see that I hit run code and it is printed 1, 2, 3. Now what if I want it to print the actual numbers 1, 2, 3? Well, I could say I plus 1, and when I run it, now I have 1, 2, 3 because I was 0 to begin. Now it's increased by 1. I could start this at 1 and run it, but now I only get 1, 2. I can change this to an equal sign, and now I could run 1, 2, 3. So I can make these changes in here all day long. No matter what I want to do, I can make it happen. Okay. Say I want to do something 1,000 times. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my original format, and I'm going to go from 0 to less than 1,000. Now if I just run numbers, it'll take it a second because that's a lot to run. And there we go. There are all the numbers 0 to 999. And you can see right, there we go, 999. I don't have to print the numbers. I could print Coach Floyd. And I could print that 1,000 times. Probably shouldn't have done 1,000 because that's going to take a minute, but it should pop up here. And there we go. So there's my name 1,000 times. So I just produced 1,000 things with 3 lines of code right here. Okay, so for loops are super duper important, and they really help you. Okay, so let's look at the things that you're supposed to do. You've got in trouble in school for coming delayed. If anybody watches The Simpsons, Bart Simpson is always writing 100 sentences on the board. If he had this, would have made life a lot easier. You would have to write, I will not come late to school 100 times on the board. That will take you a while, but luckily you get to use a for loop. So you want to write a for loop that prints I will not come late to school 100 times. You just saw me do that, so that was a pretty simple one. Now the worm. The worm is a little difficult, so we're going to do this together. I'm going to help you through. The expectation is that you still go through there and you type this out and submit it so that you can get a grade. This one's an easy 10 points, so don't miss out. So this is what we're going to do. We're actually making graphics. We're using a for loop to make a graphic. So we are putting circles side by side throughout the width of the canvas. So this graphics program should draw a worm. A worm is made up of num circles, so this will be a constant variable that's given to us. We're going to use a for loop to draw the worm. We're going to center it vertically in the screen. Also be sure that the worm is still drawn across the whole canvas, even if the number changes. So that means, all that means is we need to use the actual constant variable name in our program and not the number that it's representing. Make sure it's set to 15 when you run the auto grader. So let's go. Okay, so here is our num circles. So no matter what we change this to, it should still work. So let's look at what it wants us to do. This graphics program should draw a worm. It is made up of num circles, so that tells me that I need a whole bunch of circles. I am going to start with a for loop. I'm going to make a for loop that runs this many times. Okay, so for var I equals 0, always started at 0, I is less than, this is where it's saying, if I just put 15 right here, then if I was to change this, nothing changes in my program. So I don't ever want to use the number, I want to use the name of the constant variable. And I am counting by 1. Okay. So every time my for loop runs, I want to draw a circle. Okay. So, and this is the biggest thing about this is the thinking process that I'm going through, and I hope it helps you. So I'm doing something 15 times, so I wrote my for loop. Now I need to draw a circle. So var circle equals new circle. If you don't remember how to do this, remember to come over here, click on your docs, circle, and here's all of that. Okay. My circle size, oh, that's something that's not given to us. Now, here's something we have to think about. We want the worm to evenly fit across the screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make a radius variable. Now to find my radius variable, I have to take the number of circles and I have to divide the width of the screen by my number of circles. So if I take the, get width, so I need the width of the screen, and I need to divide that by the num circles. Now what this actually does is it tells me how many circles can fit, or how big each circle is that can fit across the screen. Now the problem is that's the diameter of each circle. So I need the radius. So what I got to do is I also have to divide it by 2. Okay? So now I have the radius of each circle, no matter how many circles. If I change this number to 100, then my equation right here automatically changes the radius to the perfect size so that all those circles will fit across the screen. And I'll show you that when we finish. Okay, so now in here I'm going to put radius. Alright, so because all the circles are black, I actually don't have to do a set color, but we'll do one anyway. Circle dot set color and color dot black. I need to circle dot set position, and I need to give it an X and a Y, and I need to add my circle to the screen. Okay, so now here's the tough part. I want to center each circle vertically in the screen. Well, vertically deals with my Y. So half of the circle, or half of the height. So I go get height divided by 2. So that is never going to change. Okay, so that's always going to be the same because each circle needs to be centered vertically on the page. Now the X, that is where we're going to struggle. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to put a 0 in here, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to run it. Now what we have here is we have 15 circles put on top of each other, centered vertically, but all in the same horizontal position. Now, we can't have that, okay? So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to move the circle to be completely on the screen. Well, this is kind of how we did it with our snowman, where we had to move half of the circle. So I want to move it over by the radius. Okay, and that should move it just over to where the circle is touching the left-hand side. And that's perfect. Now, when my for loop runs, the I is basically assigning a number to each circle. So the first circle it puts down, we can think of it as circle 0. The second circle would be circle 1, third circle would be circle 2, and so on. Now, in order to move these over based upon their number, what we want to do is we want to multiply by its number. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is the first radius needs to be at radius times 0, the second one needs to be at radius times 1, radius times 2, and you can tell that that will slowly move them over. And now we have our worm starting to form. However, you can see that each circle is only moved over by half of the previous circle. So I need to move it over by a full circle. So not just radius, but the diameter of the circle. So I'm moving it over by the diameter of the previous circle and the number that we're at. And now I have it. However, that first circle is now again halfway off the screen. So instead of multiplying, I'm just going to move it over by the radius. And now I have my worm. So what I've done is a lot of it is guess and check right here. Okay, I know that I had to move it over by the radius in order to get it on the screen. The I is what changes. That's the only thing that I can multiply it by in order to make each one move at a different by a different value. Okay, so I is always, always, always important anytime I have to move something. And then I realized I didn't just need to move it by one radius, I needed to move it by 2 radii to jump over the previous circle, and then everything needed to go over one more. Okay, so I'm not sure why they throw this tricky one at you on the very first time they're teaching you for loops. However, I hope this helped, and this will get you past. Now, one thing I'm going to do, oh, I did show you, say that I would show you that if I change that number, then it automatically changes it. If I change it to 10, oh, I'm still running the 100. There we go. Go 50. So, and the only reason this works is just because I used num circles and didn't put a number in there. I just used the variable names. Okay. Let's change that back to 15. All right. So the last one is the caterpillar. What it wants you to do is it wants you to make a worm and change the colors. Okay. So every other circle is a different color. The even circles, this is really important right here. The even circles are red, odd circles are green. By even, we mean when I. Okay, so remember, I is assigning the number of the circle. Well, it's either going to be a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's either going to be an even number or an odd number. I feel like we just learned in the last lesson of if statements how to tell if a number is even or odd. So let's look at this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the worm. I'm going to copy and I am going to paste. So now I have my worm. Now I get to make it a caterpillar. The only thing I need to do is I need to worry about this line of code right here. Now, one thing about control structures is I can put control structures inside of other control structures. So, if I look back at my even and odd, I'm going to open this up real quick. Come on. Refresh it. Oh, I'm getting a delay. Alright, well, I'm going to type it out then. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and put it in quotes. Now, so what that showed was if a number mod 2 equals 0, then we had a print line saying even, right? And we had else print line, I'm typing wrong, print line odd. Now, up here, I don't want to do any print lines. So instead of printing if a number is even, so what it told me was I need to check if I is even. And if that I is even, then I need to set the color of my circle to red. Otherwise, I need to set the color of my circle to green. Okay, so put this up in here. Okay, so you're going to put an if-else statement inside your for loop. You do not need to make 2 totally different circles. You just put an if-else statement based on the set color. So you set the circle if it's even, and you set the circle a different color if it's odd. Okay, so those are my big hints tonight, or for today. And if you need any help at all, please check in with me on office hours or send me a message. But I hope you have a good day.